Is your genealogy research stalled out because you're struggling to find the birth, marriage, or death record for your ancestor? Well, if so, you're in the right place because I'm going to be sharing with you 8 alternatives to finding those vital record type dates for your ancestors. Hi, I'm Lisa Lisson with Are You My Cousin, where I help to take the overwhelm out of your genealogy research. Before we jump into today's topic of 8 alternative sources to using vital records for your ancestors, I'd love it if you would hit the subscribe button. You'll be notified when new videos are posted here on the Are You My Cousin YouTube channel, which was typically every Wednesday and every Friday. Okay guys, let's talk about alternatives to vital records and finding those birth, marriage, and death records for your ancestors. Now, it's tough because formal vital records as we know them, such as death records, death certificates, birth certificates, those type of things, are in a sense kind of modern records. Birth certificates and death certificates from many states didn't even begin until the 1900s. But even if those records didn't survive or you're struggling to find one for your ancestor, we do have alternative records that we can turn to in the absence of those vital records to find those dates for the birth, marriage, and death. So let's get started. The first place that you can find that type of information is the census records. Oftentimes we are provided with either an age or a birth year, even sometimes a birth month, which can give us clues that we can then infer a birth date or birth year for an ancestor. Don't forget to check the military service records and pension records. Oftentimes, if you don't find the specific birth date listed, you will find an age for your ancestor listed, and from that age you can infer a birth year. Sometimes it's not always possible to get that specific date, but being able to infer a birth year can go a long ways in helping you with your research. Be sure and check those local newspapers. Newspapers can be a little tedious sometimes to research. I get that because oftentimes you just have to sit and read the paper, but you can find so much in those. But absolutely check the local newspaper. You might find such things for birth announcements, wedding announcements. You might find death announcements. You might find obituaries, those type of things. I've even found school records listed, so you can get a general age. Again, you may just be able to infer that birth date as opposed to finding a specific birth date, but you can, when you have a birth year or a birth range, that will go a long ways to helping you find other records for your ancestor. The fourth place you want to check for those types of records would be the church records. Now, what you're looking for here, birth, marriage, baptism records, marriage records, death events happening, whether it was a funeral, burial in the church cemetery, those types of records are where you're going to want to check for those. Now, if you're looking for, say, for instance, Catholic records, you'd absolutely check out the Find My Past Catholic Heritage Collection. It's a fabulous collection. Other records, whether it's Protestant, the different denominations within the Protestant churches, you're going to need to seek out where their heritage records are. Check the church itself, but if you can't find the church itself or it's no longer in existence, then you want to check with the historical association associated with that particular denomination. Number 5, check the city directories. Bet you didn't expect that one. No, so check the city directories. And this is actually what you can find here would be something along the ways of being able to estimate a death date. So for instance, if you were tracking your male ancestor through that census record, and through that city directory, and he's consistently showing up in where you expect him to find out, but then all of a sudden he disappears, and you see his wife's name with the designation of widow beside it. And sometimes it might say Mary, widow of John. So that is a very good indication that that gentleman passed away within the previous year. So you can absolutely have a very nice narrow death date that you can infer from that record. So yes, absolutely, check out that city directory. Number 6, check out the local cemetery. Absolutely. You want to look for that gravestone if you can find it, guys. Obviously, you'll have the birth date, you'll have a death date on those. I shouldn't say obviously, hopefully, that's what you find on those kind of things. If you can't go locally, if you can't visit that site actually in person, lots of fabulous resources online these days to see photographs of ancestors gravestones such as Find a Grave or cemeterycensus.com. Those are the two that I typically use the most. And you can actually request photographs be taken of a cemetery gravestone through those sites as well. So if you're not seeing the one you particularly need, perhaps there's someone out there who can take that photograph for you. Number 7, wills and probates. I kind of lump these together, but oftentimes in a will, obviously you can infer a death date there when that will was entered into probate. So if you know when the will was written and the will was entered into probate, you can typically infer that death date there as well. Also, probate records and the distribution of the estate records, the estate through those records. Check those. They will oftentimes list the death date there. And if not the death date, you can actually get very close to narrowing it down with a month and a year. So be sure and check for those records as well. Now our last one, number 8, check tax list. I know this is a little bit out there, but that's okay. It's an out-of-the-box tip for you guys. The reason you can check tax list is because there were laws obviously associated with those taxes about who paid tax, whether and who paid, say, a poll tax. And it was based oftentimes on age. And so you can infer if somebody is paying a tax, you can infer if they were within a certain age range. If somebody is consistently paying their taxes and appearing on that tax list for the poll tax, then all of a sudden they drop off. It may not be because they're hiding from the tax man, or it may not be because he died. It could have simply aged out of being required to pay that tax. And again, you can see when somebody begins paying tax on themselves, that can be an indication that they're coming of legal age. Now, the key to being able to use those tax records to determine and to infer a birth year or an approximate age is you have to understand the law at the time. You have to understand who was required to pay tax for that particular location and in that particular time period. So this is actually, it does get a little sticky. You just have to make sure you understand those laws and those rules surrounding the tax list. Then you can use those tax lists to help to infer a birth year. Okay guys, there you have it. 8 alternatives to using vital records to determine your ancestors' birth, marriage, or death years. Before you go, I'd love it if you would hit subscribe button at the bottom right hand corner on this video. That way you can not miss any future videos that appear here on the Are You My Cousin YouTube channel. Have a great day, guys, and best of luck as you delve into these alternative sources to vital records. Bye.